Welcome to today's podcast. Today I've got with me Tony Vaughan from Vexus. Now, Vexus are brokers and they'll help you when you're at that stage when you need to actually exit your business and sell your business. I met Tony, 12 months ago now, and we've had a couple of conversations since. But the thing that really caught my attention recently was one of Tony's posts on LinkedIn where he talked about zombie buyers. I won't steal his thunder. I'll let him introduce himself and introduce the term that he's coined. Tony, welcome to Exit Insights podcast.
Hi, thank you, Daryl. Thank you for the introduction.
Hey, my pleasure, Tony. Look, why don't we start and get you to introduce yourself and Vexus, and then we'll jump onto that LinkedIn post and explore the different ways of exiting your business and some of the tips and tricks you've got. And how you can help buyers exit on their terms and make the most of their life's work.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Tony Vaughan. I'm the founder and managing director of Vexus Corporate, based out of London. I've been helping business owners exit and sell their business for just over 10 years now. I'm not your typical broker. So I'm not an accountant by trade. I'm not a solicitor. I've never worked in a bank. In fact, I built my own business of 250 people. I exited some 15 years ago, and that's how I got into helping people prepare and execute their exit.
So 10 years in the game, you must have a fair few experience and stories to tell about the good, the bad, the indifferent.
Good, the bad, the ugly. And one day I might write a book on it.
Yeah, well, you can't use that title. I think it may have already been used.
Yes.
But you must have some war stories of what good looks like, how buyers can prepare and have a good process. I've heard some people talk about stories where they get to the end of their journey where they're ready to go, move on to the next phase of their life, and because it's something that they don't do all the time, it's something new, this exit process for them. And if they're not prepared, it can end up feeling like a messy divorce. And I think you and I have sort of had conversations around that. And, we're both similar in the fact that we want to work with business owners to help them avoid that. You've been through the journey. You've helped a lot of people. Let's talk about what does work well before we launch into some other areas.
Yeah, well, I think, first off, to recognize that every business is unique, and, every business to get to where it is a result of many years of blood, sweat and tears and investment. And you need to look at each business in its own right. But no different to any other major project. And let's be honest, selling a business is a major project. You need to plan. You need to plan ahead and prepare. And if you adopt a knee-jerk reaction, one day wake up and say, I've had enough, I want to sell my business, and you don't allow enough time, you're going to have a nasty shock. It's all about what I call strategic patience, recognizing that we're all getting older, that there will be a point on the horizon where you will want to exit your business, and rather than just ignoring it, recognize the fact and put your house in order and get ready for the day. Yeah, you won't have any surprises then.
No one sells their house, or people don't sell their house and just react and go, one day I'm going to sell my house and put it on the market next week. If they do, they're not making the most of their opportunity. Similar for selling a business, only it's a lot more complex than selling a business. It takes a fair bit longer to get it ready. If you just knee jerk and put it on the market, you're basically going to have an asset sale and fire sale prices, and you're not making the most of what you've been working for your whole career, really.
Yeah. I mean, if in my 10 years of selling businesses, I ask everyone, what's more important to you? How quickly you sell the business, or how much return you make? How much do you get for your business? And you probably won't be surprised to hear that 99% of people want to get the best deal. Yeah. So, how do you do that? You prepare. You work out a plan. You work with professionals or not. It depends what you want to do. But you work out how you're going to get from A to B and make sure that you secure the best deal possible.
Yeah. And planning is always the way. So over the 10 years, you must have seen some changes to the industry, and I guess that's what led up to this LinkedIn post, the now infamous LinkedIn post about zombie buyers. Lead us into that. What was the background, and what have you noticed?
Well, it was driven by actually a need to communicate with my team about, how we describe different types of buyer. And we have, you won't be surprised, in our CRM system we have different definitions. So we have a trade buyer, we have an investor, we have a private equity buyer. But I've seen certainly this year a growing number of a particular type of buyer, and this particular buyer is looking for a host. They're looking for an established business to take over, but their driving factor is that they want to do a no risk or no money deal. So the zombie buyer tends to be, and I'm using it quite as a generic term,
Sure.
but the common theme: they don't currently have a business. They want to buy a business, but they want to structure the deal that the seller takes all the risk. So great business if it's real and you can get it. The reality is it can be very, very distracting for a business owner, because the zombie buyer doesn't upfront tell you that they have no money or they want you to take all the risk. They disguise themselves as a genuine trade buyer, and then after after they've reviewed the information, you've given them all the contents about your business, when it comes to offer stage, then you're generally disappointed that it's not what you expected. So that is, it's time consuming, it's disruptive, and you don't want the world knowing that you're thinking of selling. You should only ever talk to people who are seriously qualified as a potential buyer. So I was looking for a term actually to enter onto my CRM system, so it very, very quickly explained to my team what type of buyer this person is, and I came up with the term zombie buyer, which I hope it doesn't offend people. I just think it's appropriate.
Well, and I'm seeing a lot of I guess social media posts out there at the moment where people are looking to buy businesses for £1, and it seems, I don't know, from my perspective, a little unrealistic or naive to think, hey, look, this person's built their business, an entrepreneur, they've built their business up over 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it is. They've taken all the risk, the entrepreneurial risk, they've grown the business, they've built something of value. Now, for someone to come in and, if I'm understanding, want to take no risk, it leads you to wonder how well they'll run the business and what will happen to the business after they've purchased it. Do these people tend to have experience in running businesses? Is there anything?
I think they come in all shapes and sizes. So, business is business, and I think it's fair to assume that every buyer wants to get their target for the best possible deal, and every seller equally wants to get the best possible deal for them. And there tends to be general parameters of acceptance and normality when you're doing transactions. I think the zombie buyer is working outside those norms. I think they're perhaps fueled by a few examples of transactions that have happened. For example, 5 years ago, British Home Stores, a company that turned over £675 million and had over 160 stores, was sold for £1. And it was sold to, and these are the words on the internet, not mine, a serial bankrupt called Dominic Chappell. So the headlines are £650 million business sold for £1. If you only look at the headlines, what a fantastic story. But we all know the reality is months later they went spectacularly bust. And I think people want to believe the headlines and then not actually look at the content and the reality below it. In this world, you get what you pay for. What my problem and my issue is the time and effort and distraction that these zombie buyers will take from a business owner, when they're trying to grow their business, they're trying to prepare, they're trying to get their house in order so that they can sell it successfully to a genuine buyer, and the zombie buyers just, take them off the beaten track.
So one of these zombie buyers comes along and they, I don't know, what is it, their mantra? They don't want to take any risk, or is it they just don't have any assets behind them to back the deal?
Generally both. So I think the utopia for the zombie buyer is that they get it for no money down, and the buyer takes all of the downside risk if things go wrong. There is a place, and there are scenarios where a highly structured deal may be right for the business owner. Okay, but I think they should only take place if the business owner has exhausted all other options. So maybe the business has been on the market for a few years. Maybe they've got a health issue, or there's some other pressing reason why they need to exit sooner rather than later. And in that case, find yourself an industry expert, someone who knows your sector, who has a business, who can bring synergy to the two businesses, and drive it forwards. And then maybe you consider that deal. But someone who doesn't know your sector is suggesting that they're going to change it by changing back office, making back office efficiencies, isn't going to drive the business forward, and I think should be avoided at all costs. I also think it's slightly disrespectful that someone who's never worked in a sector before thinks that they can run it better than the business owner who's been doing it for 20 years. It's not real. It's not real.
Yeah, we've all seen the stories of the theoretical best way to run a business and to grow a business is from the perspective of not having operational skills, because then you're not trapped to the factory floor, so to speak, whether that be accounting, lawyer, or even hairdresser. And dentist is another one. If I'm not a dentist, then I'm not going to get trapped into being a dentist, which means I have to focus on building the business and look at the assets and how to run a business, which is one perspective. But
you could go, if you flip it completely the other way, so then you have no industry knowledge and you're very good on the back office. I think you're back to square one. I think you need both skills to make it successful.
We need both skills in the business going forward, absolutely, and moving forward. Okay, so what do these deals look like that these people want to do? What do they want to put in place, for example? Have you got any examples you can share?
I think generally, the truth is that I will qualify them out at an early stage. So when I'm talking to any prospective buyer, I'm looking for the pot of gold. I'm looking for the synergy between buyer and seller that's going to motivate this deal to take place. Because selling a business and buying a business is tough. It takes a long time and it involves generally a lot of money. So you want both buyer and seller in the boat together. So as soon as I see signs that there's no money available, I might check them out on Companies House. Very common, very often they're a startup company, share capital of £100 or £500. That doesn't completely discount them, because maybe they got funding behind them. But firstly, I see no history. Then I talk to them and I say, well, what do you know about this space? And they go, well, nothing. I'm looking at all types of business. And once I hear that word agnostic or, sector agnostic, I sort of tend to think, hang on a minute, what value can you bring to this business? Why are you going to be able to run it better than my client? Then they start talking and only wanting to see accounts. They want to see the accounts and the cash flow projections and the profit. And they're not asking questions like, how can I grow this business? How can I turn it from a £1 million business into a £2 million business, for example? And, from the question, I realized that they want to actually be able to lever the assets, put no money of their, or very little of their own money down. And I know that for my clients, that's not the relationship they're looking for. We're looking for a good fit, someone that's going to take that business on to the next level and be successful. Now, of course, the zombie buyers believe and want to make that business successful. I just question whether they've got the skill set and industry knowledge to be able to do it. And if they're not putting any flesh in the game, if it is low money down, low risk for them and all the risk for the buyer, where's the real driving force to make it successful? There is, a bit of motivation by commitment doesn't hurt in business.
Mm.
If they've got nothing to lose, it's all risky for the seller.
So what about the seller's perspective? Are they tempted with these deals, or what's happening in the market there?
I think if the zombie buyers were open and honest up front, and they said, hey, I don't know your space, I've got no money, and I want you to take all the risk. Do you want to talk? Then I think most people would say, no, thank you, not for me. But that's not what they do. They pretend that they're a serious buyer. They build websites and they call themselves private equity. They call themselves investor. And they're trying to portray an image of something that they're not. Okay. And I think that lulls people into a false sense of security. And, and I believe the majority of these deals don't happen anyway, because I say most business owners, they're not fools. They see the deal for what it is. But occasionally they might find someone at a low ebb. Maybe the business is distressed. Maybe there's personal or health things going on. And maybe they get their success by just working the numbers and getting the odd vulnerable person who, if they had otherwise prepared early, wouldn't be in a situation where they need to consider that. So it comes back. So the fuel for the zombie buyer is really the apathy, the lack of understanding, maybe the laziness, if I may say so, of the business owner, who ignores the fact that they're going to have to sell at some stage and doesn't prepare and doesn't get ready for that.
So could this be attractive to business owners at all? Like, what sort of businesses could this work for? So just, I guess, turning it on its head and going, is there a time where this could work?
I don't think there's any scenario where the zombie buyer is the right buyer. So this is assuming that they don't know the sector. That the scenario where a highly structured deal may work for them, as I say, is if let's say you take a business, it has prepared, it's given itself a few years to get ready, but they just haven't found the right buyer, putting the right deal on the table, and then the seller's circumstances means that they need to exit for whatever reason fairly quickly. Then if the buyer has the appropriate industry experience and they're a trade buyer, I think it's important for them to have a true business behind them. So if they're in the same sector and the seller's got £1 million turnover business and the buyer has a £5 million business, but they're not putting any money down, then there's something perhaps worth looking at. But someone off the streets with no industry knowledge, perhaps no business experience, that they're qualified because they've been on a course and nothing else, no, it's never going to work.
All righty. So you've got a business owner who's got a £1 million business, revenue wise. They've had their business on the market for a while. Let's put it out there 12 months plus, and they're not getting a lot of traction. What are some of the options available to them that you can see?
Patience.
Patience.
This market, is dynamic. It changes every week. There are new buyers coming into the market. There's people leaving the marketplace. If you've not sold a business after 12 months, you're at no greater or worse advantage than when you started, because it's a dynamic, moving place. So I think you would need to review your marketing strategy. What are you doing? If you've not sold it because you had offers that haven't met your expectations, maybe there's a sanity check on where the target price is going to be. But I can tell you now, Daryl, in my 10 years of selling businesses, I've never marketed a business and had no responses. However weird and wonderful they are, there's lots of people who are interested. The world is full of entrepreneurs, and there's a home for every single business if you look hard enough and you give yourself enough time.
Yeah.
You can say, if you wake up tomorrow and say, I need to sell my business by Christmas, then you're going to have a horrible shock. Okay. If you wake up tomorrow and say, I'd like to plan my exit, I'd like to get my house in order, and I'm thinking of exiting in 2021, 22, 23, then you're in control, you have lots of options, and the chances are you'll get a positive result.
Yeah, so having that long-term view, it gives you runway to plan, but also importantly, you've got to keep your eye on the ball. Preparing and going through an exit process does take a lot of time and effort, but you've still got to keep the business running, and you can't be distracted by these things. I've just heard too many stories of business owners, just having one buyer nibbling, and going down the route with just that one buyer and just getting distracted, taking their eyes off the ball. Then if something happens, the deal falls through, they're at a disadvantage as well, because they haven't maintained focus and the business has gone backward somewhat.
Yeah. And you can never, ever, it makes me shudder actually that people still consider selling their business and having a one-horse race with one buyer. You need to test the market. You need to meet multiple buyers just to find out really what your business is worth. All us brokers and professionals, we're happy to give an indication of a business, business value or potential target price. But that's just our opinion at a moment in time. The real test is going to market, engaging with more than one, strategic buyer, and seeing what offers come on the table. And you'll be surprised at the range on how they can differ. And you need to do that process actually to understand what your business is worth and what your options are.
Yeah.
Strategic tension, competitive tension is what makes it work for a seller. The one horse race will never ever work. It only works for the buyer, not the seller.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point, because it doesn't matter what you're selling. Value is always in the eye of the buyer, not the seller. And the buyer determines value. So that would explain the range of values you get, or valuations you get for a business. But what we've got to do is go, how do we present this business? How do we prepare the business in a way so that it becomes more attractive to a wider range of buyers who will be interested in going, actually, that could complement my portfolio or add to my business.
And I think it comes back to how much time, how big the run up is for their exit. So again, if you want to maximize your exit value, often the buyer will want the vendor to stick around for a while, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe longer. So you've got the marketing time, you've got the handover time, some exits might take 3 or 4 years actually, from pressing the button to actually when the vendor's free to get, go and sit on the beach somewhere. So I think many people don't realize that it could take that long. It doesn't always take that long, but I think you should prepare for the worst case scenario, rather than just leave yourself, at a disadvantage by not having enough time.
Yeah.
Basically, there are people in the marketplace who prepare and they do it right, and generally their exit is good. They get a sensible number, they're comfortable with the deal. And then there's people that don't prepare, and unfortunately it's those people that don't prepare that are fodder, if you like, for the zombie buyers, and they're the people that will probably be disappointed at their final deal value. And it's really down to them not preparing or doing the job properly from the start.
Yeah, I heard it described once as, those who don't prepare or start to plan for their exit are more likely to go through the experience and it end up feeling like a messy divorce, which I thought was perhaps a good way to describe it. So from what you've seen, Tony, is there, do all businesses sell? And those that, assuming that they don't all sell, what is it about those businesses that don't sell? Is there any trends that we can share with the listeners?
I am an optimist, and I think given enough time and the right pricing of the business, they will all sell. So there are clearly some business models that are more attractive than others. So you won't be surprised to hear that a business in today's environment that has some form of recurring income, contracted revenue, some visibility on future incomes are very attractive and will generally sell quicker than a business that is perhaps more project based and you're as good as your last deal. But as I said, the world is full of entrepreneurs and optimists, and whatever the business is, it is a ready-made platform for another person or another business to come and get involved and take it to the next level.
Yeah.
So why will something not sell? Maybe if the vendor's expectations aren't lined up. Maybe if they don't put the appropriate effort and resources into finding that buyer. I mean, you'll hear many business owners say that my business is my pension. That is the case in many scenarios. But equally, lots of buyers just think someone will phone them up one day and make them the offer they can't refuse. And again, where it does happen very, very occasionally, it can't be your plan. You have to take control of your destiny and plan your exit.
Yeah, look, I've seen a lot of that over the years where business owners have, waited and they've responded when someone's come and approached them with a deal. And what typically happens is when they're approached, well, they describe their business and they go, we've got this and we've got this and we've got this in place. And then the buyer says, well, if that's all true, then I'll offer you this amount of money. The business owner gets seduced by that nice big number and says, you beauty, happy days. I'm going to sell my business for X. Sign a heads of terms. There's only one player in the market, which you've already highlighted the risks of that earlier. But I refer to this as, well, you're not selling your business or exiting on your terms. You're responding to the buyer, so it's their terms. They're dictating the terms to you. Now they start doing a bit of due diligence, and they're looking under the hood, if you like, of the car, looking under the bonnet, and they go, well, you described it to me like this, and now I've had a closer look. It's a bit more like this, and well, where's this information, and what about that, and how does that work? Oh, it's all in your head. Well, if that's the case, well, that nice big offer I gave you is now down to this, and they're really on the back foot, and too many times I've seen this happen over the years, where they're on the back foot now, and they've only got one player in the market. They've backed themselves. They've gone down this so far, down. It's just not pretty. And they haven't done any financial planning outside of the business because they, as you say, my business is my pension. And all of a sudden their pension's not worth as much as they were hoping for. Yeah. And hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a plan. And that's kind of why I guess you and I are in business to work with business owners to go, look, guys, hope is not going to get you what you want.
No, and they've effectively shot themselves in the foot through not doing the process correctly. And there's no secret. If you want to have a successful exit, you need half a dozen people around the table at the beginning who are genuinely interested in your business because it brings some strategic value to their operation. If you achieve that, and that takes hard work to get there, guess what? You're going to have options. You're going to have choice, and most importantly, you'll have a scenario where the buyer is convincing you to sell to them, not the reverse of where you're trying to convince them to buy your business. And that subtle change makes a very big difference when it comes to the final result.
Absolutely. That's putting you on the front foot rather than the back foot. You're now in the driver's seat. So, okay, so we're moving forward now. I've up until now avoided the C word with all of my podcasts, but we are in 2020 and COVID is been a big pain in the butt for a lot of us. What's your experience with COVID in the market? Are businesses still selling for you from what you're seeing? Is it affecting prices? What's happening there?
Well, this year will be our best year in terms of number of business sales and in terms of the income we generate. That's not because we're selling more businesses because the prices are being reduced, so there's more volume. In fact, the prices are holding out for COVID-friendly businesses. Okay, there are unfortunately some great businesses that have just been on the wrong side of how things work, and for example, restaurant or event businesses. Some of those poor business owners have been decimated by what's happened. But there are businesses that have continued. There are businesses that actually have done well out of COVID because they've had to reinvent themselves and re-engineer how they do things. I've got one consultancy business that used to send, which the deal's going through. It's due to complete sort of back end of November. It's a multi-million-pound business sale, and they send specialists out on site. And for a few years, they wanted to try doing their consultancy meetings on Zoom. But the truth is they just weren't brave enough to take it to the marketplace. COVID has forced them to do that. It's been really, really successful. And guess what? As a result, they've reduced costs. They can do more. They can generate more revenue per consultant. There's no travel costs. So it's had a really, really positive impact on their business. So I think going forwards, I think that we have to recognize there's probably going to be a recession. Businesses that have shareholders, that have investors who demand growth regardless of what happens, there's going to be a really big appetite going forwards for businesses that have proven their business is resilient to COVID. And I think that there's certainly no downward pressure on price for those businesses. If anything, there's going to be more interest in those companies, so they might get themselves an extra special deal over the next few years. Yeah,
look, and that confirms everything else I'm hearing. So, people in the industry are all saying, look, there's no real impact unless you're in a specific type of industry. But a lot of business owners out there are concerned. When I talk to business owners, they go, let me just get through this first. And I go, well, what happens? Even though at Succession Plus, we don't sell businesses, we just get them exit ready. We go, what a buyer's looking for is likelihood of the business achieving the forecast or ongoing revenue. So if you've got a business model that demonstrates the likelihood that it's met its targets in the past, it's got consistency of revenue, or even better, consistency of growth, then there's no reason why a strategic buyer or a informed buyer just looks at it and says, well, sales have dipped for a few months this year. We know why that is. That's through no fault of your own. It's just one page of the book.
The fundamentals are unchanged, essentially. That few month dip hit everyone, including the buyers, so no one is exempt from it. But it's also about having your feet firmly on the ground. So people I'm talking to now, I'm talking about exiting this time next year or 2022. So I think COVID has probably added 6 months to a typical sales cycle. It hasn't removed the need for it, and it hasn't removed anything. It's just elongated what is already a fairly long process. But if you start early, if you are working on a 2, 3 or 4 year plan to exit, we're talking many years ahead. And by not doing anything, all you do is you start to fall into the trap of the assertive buyers that don't want to give you the right deal.
So 2, 3, 4. That's some serious planning for business owners. Over that period of time, they can implement some other strategies that would really make them more attractive as well. If they start planning a couple of years ahead, there's a good chance that they can make their business even more attractive to a buyer. And depending on their risk profile, they can even build it over 3 or 4 years. They can increase the size of the business enough so that it puts it into the next category of business as a step up as well, and often out of the trade sale area, if you like, or selling to a competitor, to selling to someone who's looking to add a new product or territory to their portfolio.
And as I say, in that 2, 3 or 4, there might be a year of handover support as well. So I'm talking about a full exit rather than doing the deal. But probably for another time, and maybe a different subject. Now is a good time to do a structured deal where you actually effectively merge into a bigger company, and then you benefit for some of that growth over a year or 2 year for your second part of the exit. So you lever off a bigger business to get that bit of growth that you wouldn't otherwise get without the appropriate funding or support. So for people who are saying, well, I'm only 55 or 60, I've got another 5 years left in me, maybe that final stage could be actually joining forces with a bigger business, because it de-risks it for the buyer. And the more you can de-risk a deal for a buyer, the more they're prepared to pay. So it could be a win-win situation. But that's another subject.
Buyers are evaluating their risk, and their risk assessment is what influences their valuation.
Absolutely.
So, Tony, look, we've we've talked a lot. We've covered zombie buyers. We've covered a bit of the COVID market. Like, based on your experience, been in the industry 10 years and been a player before that as an entrepreneur, what tips would you like to share with people listening? What's, from your experience there at Vexus, what's the most important thing that you'd really like listeners to take away from this conversation today?
Well, I think business is tough, and and we all have good days, bad days, good weeks, bad weeks, etc. COVID would have been devastating for some businesses. It would have helped others. You just need to focus on drive your business forwards, and without repeating what we've already covered, recognize that you're going to want to exit your business one day. Yeah, if you've got children that are ready to take over, perfect. But unfortunately, in this country, most of the children want the money, not the business. So, if a sale is on the horizon, just give yourself the biggest run up, because the end result will be better.
Plan for it.
Plan for it.
Brilliant.
Well, don't believe what people tell you in terms of the buyers about what it's worth, and when they tut and hum and ha. Do your research, get your comparables. Talk to a business advisor or do it on your own. It doesn't matter. But what does matter is you do your research and you put the appropriate effort into exiting the business that you've created. You don't want to give it away for nothing.
Yeah. And most businesses or business owners, they're only going to do this once, and it represents their lifetime's work. And we really want to set them up so with a bit of planning, they really can get the most from their life's work and leave on their terms and in their time frame, from the sounds of things.
No second chances. You say you do it once, and you don't want any regrets afterwards as well. It's a long time to be regretting the deal you've done, so do it properly. Excellent.
Well, Tony, thanks for your time today. Why don't you just leave our listeners with, if they want to learn more about you and Vexus, how do they find you?
Go to the internet. My name's Tony Vaughan. You can find me at www.vexus, that's vexus.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time today, and appreciate you talking us through zombie buyers and how to avoid them.
You're welcome, Darryl. Thank you very much. Thank you.